Dr. Kim Hana wiped sweat from her brow as the Martian sun beat down through the habitat dome. 6 months into their expedition, the team had catalogued hundreds of rock samples, but found nothing beyond basic geological formations. Today felt different. "Dr. Park, you need to see this," she called, her voice echoing across the red landscape. Her hands trembled slightly as she continued brushing dust from what appeared to be a metallic corner protruding from the bedrock. Dr. Park Jin crossed the dig site, his boots leaving prints in the rusty soil. "What have you found?" he asked, kneeling beside her. His expression changed from mild curiosity to wide-eyed shock as he saw the perfectly geometric edge emerging from the rock. "It's artificial," Hana said quietly. "And look at the material. It's not like anything we've documented before." Park ran his gloved fingers along the exposed edge. "Let's get the rest of the team." Within an hour, 5 scientists worked carefully to expose more of the object. As they removed the surrounding soil, they revealed what appeared to be a rectangular container, roughly the size of a small briefcase. Strange symbols were etched into its surface, flowing patterns that reminded Hana of ancient writing systems, yet unlike anything in human history. "Be careful," warned Dr. Lee Song, the team's senior archaeologist. "This could be the first proof of non-human intelligence in our solar system." Park connected his portable analyzer to the surface of the object. The team fell silent as the device hummed, processing data about the artifact's composition and age. When the results appeared on his screen, Park stared in disbelief. "This can't be right," he whispered. "According to these readings, this object is at least 7 million years old." The team exchanged glances. Human civilization was barely 10,000 years old. Modern humans had only existed for about 300,000 years. "There must be an error in the dating process," said Dr. Yang Ho, shaking his head. "Perhaps the Martian soil affected the readings." "Run it again," Hana suggested, "and let's take samples from multiple points." Park nodded and reset his equipment. This time he took readings from 3 different spots on the object. Each came back with the same impossible age range, 7 to 8 million years old. "There's more," Park said, his voice barely audible over the sound of the habitat's air filters. "I'm detecting organic material preserved within the container, and the DNA traces—" He paused, running the analysis twice more before continuing. "They're human, not just similar to human DNA, they're us." "That's not possible," Lee Song said firmly. "Humans evolved on Earth, not Mars." "The evidence suggests otherwise," Hana replied, her scientific training battling with the impossible implications, or at least, it suggests something we've never considered before. As night fell over the Martian landscape, the team carefully transported the artifact to their laboratory module. Under the bright lights, they examined it from every angle, documenting each symbol and feature. When they finally managed to open it, they found additional objects inside. Small tools made of an unknown alloy, data crystals unlike any storage, medium known to modern science, and most surprisingly, a preserved biological sample in a transparent container. "If these readings are accurate," Park said as he analyzed the sample, "this is human tissue, but it contains genetic markers we don't have in modern humans, additions to our genetic code, not differences." Hana sat down, her mind racing with possibilities. "What if—" she began, then stopped, almost afraid to speak the thought aloud. "What if humans didn't originate on Earth at all? Or what if we were once far more advanced than we are now, spread across the solar system, before something happened that forced us back to Earth?" The team stayed up all night, analyzing data and debating theories. By morning, they had drafted a preliminary report to send back to Earth, knowing their findings would face intense scrutiny and probable dismissal from the scientific community. "They'll say we contaminated the samples," Yang Ho warned. "Then we'll be more careful than anyone has ever been," Hana replied. "We'll document everything, multiple tests, multiple methods." The next day, while expanding their search area, they found more artifacts, an entire complex of structures buried beneath the Martian surface. Each new discovery reinforced their impossible conclusion. Humans, or beings nearly identical to humans, had once lived on Mars millions of years before recorded history. When the first images reached Earth, the reaction was immediate and divided. Most dismissed the findings as errors or hoaxes. A few recognized the significance of what the Mars team had discovered. As Dr. Kim Hana recorded her personal log that night, she looked out at the stars through the habitat window. "Today we learned that we might not be who we thought we were," she said softly. "We've always looked to the stars as our future. Now we must consider they might also be our past." The small team worked tirelessly, unaware that their discovery would eventually rewrite humanity's understanding of its place in the cosmos, transforming humans from cosmic newcomers to the ancient elders of the galaxy. Captain Lee Tae stood at the airlock entrance of Harmony Station, Earth's most advanced orbital platform, and the chosen site for humanity's first official contact with alien life. Through the viewport, he watched the sleek silver vessel of the Viridian delegation dock with graceful precision. His heart pounded, but his face remained calm. 20 years in the Space Defense Force had prepared him for many things, though. Perhaps not for meeting beings from another star. "Remember," said Ambassador Suji beside him, straightening her formal blue uniform, "they've been observing us for decades before making contact. They know more about us than we know about them." Lee nodded. "That already puts us at a disadvantage." The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss. 6 Viridians entered, ducking their tall frames through the human-sized doorway. Lee had studied the briefing materials, but seeing them in person was different. Their iridescent scaled skin shifted colors with each movement, creating rippling patterns of blue, green, and purple. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, with slender limbs and elongated necks that gave them an imposing presence. Most striking were their eyes. 3 of them, arranged in a triangle on their faces, each with multiple pupils that adjusted independently. The lead Viridian wore elaborate metallic ornaments along the ridges of its head and shoulders. When it spoke, the translation device on Lee's wrist converted the series of clicks and whistles into smooth Korean. "I am High Ambassador Kren of the Viridian Collective. We greet Earth and its inhabitants." Lee bowed slightly. "Captain Lee Tae, of Earth's Space Defense Force, we welcome you to Harmony Station." The formal introductions continued as they moved to the conference room prepared for this historic meeting. Lee noticed how the Viridians seemed to analyze everything: the construction of the station, the technology visible on displays, even the physical characteristics of the humans they passed. Their third eye often moved independently, scanning in all directions. In the conference room, with its large viewport showing Earth below, the delegation settled around a circular table. The Viridians seemed to find the chairs uncomfortable, but made no complaint. "We have observed your development with interest," High Ambassador Kren said. "Your species advances quickly, if somewhat chaotically." There was something in the tone, even through the translator, that made Lee bristle. Condescension. He'd heard the same tone from superior officers who thought a country boy from the farming provinces couldn't succeed in space. Ambassador Suji, sensing the tension, stepped forward smoothly. "We welcome the chance to learn about the Viridian Collective. Our understanding is that your civilization spans multiple star systems." A smaller Viridian, with more reddish scales, consulted a device on its wrist. "We currently inhabit 17 systems with full colonies and maintain outposts in 43 others." "Impressive," Suji replied with genuine admiration. "Our records indicate our civilization has existed for 40 millennia, the Viridian continued. "We have recordings of our first interstellar voyage, preserved through generations. Few species in the known sectors have such a continuous history." Lee noticed how they emphasized their age, as if longevity alone determined worth. He'd seen the same attitude in certain Earth cultures, the older civilization looking down on the newcomers. Another Viridian, whose scales had darker patterns, leaned forward. "We have studied your historical records. Your species only achieved basic spaceflight 70 Earth years ago. Quite remarkable progress for such a short time, but still in early development stages." The High Ambassador made a dismissive gesture with one four-fingered hand. "Young species often overestimate their importance in the cosmic order. We have seen many civilizations rise and fade. Some burn brightly but briefly." Lee felt his jaw tighten. The Viridian spoke as if humanity was a child to be patted on the head. He glanced at Suji, who gave him a barely perceptible nod. "Perhaps," Suji said, her voice calm but firm. "We should share some of our recent discoveries." She activated her tablet, and a holographic display appeared above the table. The Martian artifacts rotated slowly in 3 dimensions: the strange, metallic container, the tools, and most importantly, the DNA analysis results. 30 years ago, our explorers found these on Mars, our neighboring planet, Suji explained. At first, we thought they might be evidence of another spacefaring species that had visited our system. The Viridians leaned forward, their triple eyes focusing intently on the display. But further analysis proved something unexpected. G continued, enlarging the DNA strand model. These were created by human hands 12 million years ago. The reaction was immediate and unmistakable. The Viridians' multiple pupils dilated simultaneously. What humans had learned during preliminary cultural exchanges was their expression of shock or surprise. The scales around their necks flared, changing to a pale yellow color. "Impossible," the High Ambassador said, but there was uncertainty in its voice now. "Your species evolved on this planet. All our observations confirm this." Lee stepped forward. "We did evolve here, or rather, re-evolve. The evidence suggests that humans once had an advanced civilization that spanned at least our solar system, possibly more. Something happened, something catastrophic that sent us back to the Stone Age." The Viridian with reddish scales spoke rapidly in their native language, too fast for the translators to catch. The High Ambassador raised a hand for silence. "These artifacts," it said slowly, "they match certain relics our archaeologists have found on worlds throughout the sector, relics we could never identify." For the first time since they'd arrived, Lee saw the Viridians look at the humans not with condescension, but with a new emotion, something between confusion and a reluctant respect. "We would request permission to examine these artifacts directly," the High Ambassador said. "Of course," Suji replied, "and we would be interested to see the relics you've discovered." As the meeting continued, Lee noticed a shift in the atmosphere. The Viridians no longer spoke down to them, but engaged as equals. Whatever humanity had once been, it had left an impression on the galaxy that even 40,000 years of Viridian history couldn't erase. By the day's end, plans were made for a joint expedition, humans and Viridians together, to investigate other sites where similar artifacts had been found. As Lee escorted the delegation back to their ship, the High Ambassador paused. "Captain," it said quietly, "we may have much to learn from each other after all." The massive stone doorway slowly parted, releasing a rush of stale air that had been sealed away for millions of years. Professor Yunjun held his breath, not just from the ancient dust swirling around them, but from the sheer magnitude of what lay before him. Behind specialized breathing masks, the joint human-Viridian expedition team stared in awe. "By the stars," whispered Dr. Kang, the team's senior archaeologist, "it's really here." What they'd discovered on planet Kepler 438b wasn't just another artifact or buried structure. It was an entire complex that stretched for kilometers beneath the planet's surface, perfectly preserved, as if waiting for someone to return. Professor Yun adjusted his headlamp and stepped forward onto the polished floor. The material beneath his boots wasn't stone or metal as they knew it, but something in between, a strange alloy that had withstood eons without degradation. The walls were lined with intricate patterns that seemed to shift slightly when viewed from different angles. 3 months of excavation to reach this point, he said, his voice barely containing his excitement, worth every second. Behind him, 6 human researchers and 4 Viridian scholars carefully entered the vast chamber. The alliance between the two species was still new and somewhat fragile, formed primarily around this shared investigation into humanity's possible ancient past. "The architecture matches fragments we've found on 17 different worlds," said Kell, the lead Viridian researcher. Its iridescent scales shimmered in the artificial light as it studied the ceiling arches. But never anything this complete. The chamber opened into a massive hall with branching corridors. But what immediately captured everyone's attention were the columns of light, hundreds of them running from floor to ceiling. "Data storage," said Han Mina, pushing her way forward. At 32, she was the youngest member of the human team and their leading expert on ancient languages. "These are information pillars. I've seen smaller versions in the Mars artifacts. She approached one of the light columns, her hands hovering near but not touching the softly glowing surface. Symbols and images flickered within the light, moving, too quickly for the human eye to follow. "They're activated by our presence," said Dr. Kang in wonder. "They know we're here." Han Mina pulled out her specialized tablet, a device created by combining human and Viridian technology. She carefully positioned it near the light column, allowing its sensors to interact with the ancient information system. "The interface is responding," she said, excitement making her voice rise. It's trying to communicate." For 3 hours, the team worked to establish a connection between their technology and the ancient system. The Viridians provided crucial insights about similar interfaces they'd encountered in their archaeological work, while the human team contributed their knowledge of the Mars artifacts. Eventually, Han Mina let out a cry of triumph. "The translation matrix is working. I'm getting readable output." Everyone gathered around her station, where symbols were now appearing on her screen, gradually transforming into recognizable text. "They called themselves the Forerunners," she read aloud, then paused, squinting at the changing translation. "No, wait, that's not quite right. The translation is shifting as the system learns our language better. The word is humankind." Heavy silence fell over the team. The Viridians' three-eyed gazes shifted between the human researchers and the ancient texts. "Keep going," Professor Yun urged, his heart pounding so loudly he was sure everyone could hear it. Han Mina's fingers danced across the holographic symbols, navigating through the ancient database. "This is incredible. The system contains star maps, historical records, biological data, more information than we could process in lifetimes." She focused on what appeared to be a historical archive. As the translation improved, more text became readable. "According to these records," Professor Yun said, his hands trembling as he read over her shoulder, "human civilization didn't begin on Earth. We had a vast interstellar empire 12 million years ago. We weren't colonizing the galaxy. We were returning to it." Dr. Kang shook his head in disbelief. "But how? What happened to us? Why did we end up back on Earth with no memory or technology?" Han Mina navigated deeper into the records. There are references to something called the Great Regression, some kind of deliberate process. One of the Viridian researchers, smaller than the others with scales that shifted between deep blue and purple, approached their console. The usual confident, somewhat superior demeanor typical of Viridians was noticeably absent. Instead, it moved with something resembling reverence. "May I?" it asked, indicating the screen. Professor Yun nodded, and the Viridian studied the data, its triple pupils dilating as it absorbed the information. "These biological profiles," it said finally, turning to face the humans, "we have encountered references to them before in our oldest texts. Your genetic patterns match what our ancestors called the architect species. We had thought them mythical, beings, who seeded life throughout the galaxy and then vanished." Its voice took on an unusual tone. "We never imagined they might be you." Dr. Kang laughed nervously. "That's impossible. Humans are just one species on one planet. We've never been advanced enough to seed life across the galaxy." "Until now we would have agreed," said Kel, the lead Viridian. "But this evidence suggests otherwise. According to these records, your species was ancient when the first Viridian ancestors were still primitive aquatic creatures." Han Mina had continued exploring the database while they talked. "Look at this," she said suddenly, pulling up a new display. "It's showing Earth, but not as we know it." The holographic image showed their home planet, with dramatically different continents, land masses in configurations no human had ever seen. "That's Earth from over 10 million years ago," Professor Yun whispered, "before continental drift created our current geography." As the day progressed, the team discovered more staggering revelations. The records indicated that ancient humans had established outposts on thousands of worlds, developed technologies far beyond current understanding, and even guided the evolution of other species. When they finally took a break to rest and process what they'd found, Professor Yun sat alone, staring at the gleaming walls of the ancient structure. "We've been asking the wrong questions all along," he said when Dr. Kang joined him. We've been wondering if we're alone in the universe, if we'll ever find our place among the stars." He looked up at his colleague, eyes bright with emotion. "But the truth is, we were there first. We're not newcomers to the galactic stage. We're the elders who forgot who we were." Dr. Kang nodded slowly. "The real question now is what happened to us, and are we ready to remember?" The Grand Assembly Hall aboard the United Earth vessel Remembrance hummed with tension. Representatives from 12 different species sat in a semicircle facing the central platform, where a team of human researchers prepared to present their findings. The cavernous room, designed to accommodate beings of various sizes and atmospheric requirements, was unusually quiet. No idle conversations, no diplomatic exchanges, just anticipation. Chief Historian Choi Sung adjusted his formal attire nervously. At 63, he had spent his career studying ancient civilizations on Earth, never imagining he would one day present evidence about humanity's forgotten galactic past to an audience of alien dignitaries. "Are you ready?" whispered Dr. Park. Yun, the team's xenobiologist, Choi nodded. "As ready as anyone can be when rewriting the history of every species in this room." The lights dimmed, and Director Nam Jin of the United Earth Council stepped onto the platform. "Distinguished representatives," she began, her voice steady despite the historical weight of the moment. 3 months ago, our joint expedition with the Viridian Collective discovered an intact data repository on Kepler 438b. What we found there has changed everything we thought we knew about our place in the galaxy." She gestured to Choi, who took her place at the podium. Behind him, a large holographic display flickered to life. The ancient library, as we've come to call it, contained billions of records from a civilization that existed approximately 12 million years ago, Choi explained. "After extensive analysis and translation, we can now confirm that this civilization was, in fact, human." A murmur rippled through the assembly. The Marigi representative, a feathered being with 4 arms, leaned forward. "Impossible! 12 million years ago, your species was still primitive on your homeworld." "That is what we believed as well," Choi replied. "But we have discovered evidence of a deliberate erasure of our history, something called the Great Regression." He tapped a control, and the display changed to show a recovered data file. "We found this recording sealed in a quantum-preserved vault. It appears to be a final message from the leaders of ancient humanity." The holographic display flickered and stabilized, showing the image of a woman in a uniform unlike anything in human history. Her features were remarkably similar to modern humans. She could have walked down any street on Earth without drawing notice, except for a subtle luminescence to her eyes that suggested genetic modifications beyond current human capabilities. "When Ethan Bite," she spoke. Her voice echoed through the chamber with surprising clarity for a recording millions of years old. "I am Admiral Kim Jia, final commander of the human collective. The void entity approaches from intergalactic space. Our final defense requires the Great Regression." The image shifted, showing a massive dark mass moving between galaxies, visible only by the absence of stars where it passed. "We have fought the entity for 300 years, Admiral Kim continued. "It consumes advanced consciousness, turning our own technology against us. Each world that falls makes it stronger. We have evacuated 97% of human-populated worlds to protected spaces, but our defenses are failing." The assembly watched in stunned silence as the recording showed fleets of ships fighting against something that seemed to absorb both matter and energy. "The Council of Worlds has made its final decision," Kim said, her face showing both determination and sorrow. "To save both ourselves and the younger species we have nurtured, we must implement Protocol Omega, the Great Regression." The recording paused, and Choi cleared his throat. "What follows is technical information about the procedure they implemented. Our scientists are still working to understand the full details, but the essential concept is clear." He gestured to Dr. Lee Mina, the team's geneticist, who stepped forward. "Ancient humans engineered their own devolution," she explained. "They deliberately reversed their evolutionary development, hiding a small population on Earth while erasing all knowledge of their past and their technology. They essentially reset their own species. The Trill Ambassador, a crystalline being that communicated through light pulses, flashed in patterns that the translators converted to speech. Why would any species choose such a fate? To abandon their achievements, their knowledge? Choi responded, according to the records, the void entity was drawn to advanced consciousness and technology. By reverting to a primitive state, humanity became invisible to it. He advanced to the next section of the recording. Admiral Kim's face appeared again, more solemn now. "We cannot defeat the entity with weapons," she said, "but we can outlast it. We have encoded dormant technological knowledge in our DNA, set to reawaken gradually when the danger has passed. Earth has been chosen as our sanctuary world. Geologically stable, naturally protected by its solar system configuration, and distant from major space lanes. Images flashed of complex genetic sequences being modified, of massive ships transporting sleeping humans to Earth, of installations on Mars and other solar system bodies being systematically dismantled or hidden. And what of the worlds we have? Seeded the species we have guided, Kim asked, addressing colleagues off camera. They must be protected at all costs. Implement the memory protocols. Let them forget us entirely or remember us only as myths. As the recording continued, Choi translated additional segments, revealing how the ancient humans had prepared for their own cultural and technological amnesia. They had established hidden outposts throughout the galaxy, containing records and technology designed to be discovered only when humanity returned to space. When the presentation paused for questions, an elderly Viridian rose slowly from his seat. His scales had faded to a pale blue with age, and the ceremonial metals adorning his head marked him as a keeper of their historical archives. "In our most ancient texts," the Viridian elder said, his voice wavering with emotion, "we speak of the Skyborn, beings who came from the stars when our ancestors were still swimming in the shallow seas. The Skyborn walked upon the land, modified our world's environment, and left markers in our primitive genetic code to guide our evolution." The elder touched a pattern on his chest, where the scales formed a distinct geometric shape. "We considered these stories sacred myths, the foundation of our spiritual beliefs, but they were histories of your people seeding our worlds with life, guiding us towards sentience." The assembly hall erupted in voices as representatives from other species began sharing similar stories, ancient myths that suddenly made sense as historical accounts of human intervention. Choi stood quietly at the podium, watching as the representatives of a dozen worlds came to terms with a galaxy-shifting revelation. Humans weren't newcomers to the cosmic community. They were the forgotten elders, the progenitors who had sacrificed everything to protect the younger races they had helped create. As the noise subsided, someone asked the question that hung in everyone's mind. If humanity engineered its own regression to hide from this void entity, said the Marigi representative, then where is this threat now? Did it pass or will it return? Choi exchanged glances with his team before answering. That, he said gravely, is what we must determine next. The Galactic Assembly Station orbited Earth like a gleaming silver ring, its vast windows offering a perfect view of humanity's birthplace, and as they now knew, the sanctuary world of an ancient civilization that had once spanned the stars. The grand chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 37 species filed in, their varied forms requiring specialized seating arrangements. Some floated in gravity pods, others stood on platforms, while many used the standard chairs designed to accommodate most bipedal species. At the center of it all stood United Nations Secretary-General Kang Yuna, her simple blue uniform standing out among the elaborate ceremonial garb of the alien representatives. She had refused the traditional robes of office, saying this moment called for practicality, not pageantry. "The long-range sensors don't lie," she said, her voice filling the chamber without the need for artificial amplification, a subtle sign of the changes already happening to human biology. The void entity, our ancestors fled from 12 million years ago, has returned to the edges of our galaxy. Holographic displays appeared around the chamber, showing the dark mass moving between stars, leaving dead systems in its wake. Unlike normal space phenomena, it moved with purpose, changing direction to target inhabited worlds. "For millions of years we forgot who we were," Kang continued, her eyes moving across the assembled representatives. "We rebuilt our civilization from scratch, believing ourselves to be just one young species among many. Now, as the ancient enemy approaches once more, we remember. A Philidian representative, a being of crystalline structures that shimmered within a light, raised a formation that served as its speaking appendage. The humans claim their genetic memory is returning, but we have only their word. Why should we trust the fate of our worlds to legends and dreams? Kang nodded to a man sitting quietly in the front row. Dr. Li Jin stood, his hands steady despite the enormous pressure of the moment. As the lead researcher for the Genetic Memory Project, he had spent the last 6 months collecting data from across human space. 3 weeks ago, he began, a mining engineer on Europa solved a quantum tunneling problem that our best scientists had worked on for decades. She had no formal training in quantum physics. He tapped his tablet, and a report appeared on the chamber's displays. 2 days later, a farmer on New Terra designed an atmospheric regulator that improves crop yields by 300%. He said the blueprint came to him in a dream. Dr. Li moved through dozens more examples. Ordinary humans suddenly developing extraordinary insights into technology far beyond current science. Children drawing starship designs that engineers confirmed would work. Elderly people speaking languages they had never learned. The dormant genetic memories our ancestors encoded in our DNA are activating, he explained, showing brain scans that revealed unusual activity patterns. What took us centuries to develop, we now intuitively understand. The knowledge of 12 million years of human technological development is returning, not all at once but in waves, as if responding to the approaching threat. A rumble of discussion spread through the chamber. The Viridian Prime Elder raised a scaled hand for attention. If what you say is true, what do you propose? Even with returning knowledge, your fleet is small compared to the combined forces of the galaxy. Before Kang could answer, the chamber doors opened, and Fleet Admiral Park Jun entered. His weathered face showed the strain of weeks without proper sleep, but his eyes burned with determination. Without preamble, he activated the main holographic display, showing Earth orbit filled with ships, not just human vessels, but ships from every known civilization. For the past month, he said, his deep voice commanding attention, we've received these vessels from across known space. They've come without official orders, many against the explicit instructions of their governments. The display zoomed in on individual ships, showing crews of mixed species working together. Their captains all report the same thing, Park continued. Dreams of a darkness between the stars, visions of Earth standing as a bulwark against the void, and a compulsion to bring their ships here to join what they're calling the Guardian Fleet. A young Cerealian captain stepped forward, her blue-tinged skin contrasting with her crisp uniform. I dreamed of this planet for weeks, she said. When I finally saw Earth through my view screen, I recognized it instantly, though I'd never visited before. Something in me knows this world is where we must make our stand. Similar testimonies came from other captains. Beings who had never set foot on Earth yet felt drawn to protect it. Analysis revealed that many species carried subtle genetic markers that responded to specific signals from human DNA, ancestral safeguards planted millions of years ago by the original human civilization. In the center of the chamber, a three-dimensional map appeared, showing the void entity's path toward the core worlds. Our ancestors couldn't defeat this enemy, Kang said, but they could plan for its return. They seeded the galaxy not just with life, but with a defense network spanning millennia and thousands of light years, a network we're only now beginning to understand. Admiral Park stepped forward. Yesterday, a team on Mars uncovered what we believe is a control hub for that network. We've managed to activate only a small portion of it, but already we're seeing dormant installations coming online throughout the sector. The display shifted to show ancient orbital platforms, planetary defense systems, and mysterious structures built into asteroids and moons, all slowly awakening after millions of years of hibernation. We don't claim to have all the answers, Kang said as she returned to the center of the chamber. But we know this. Humanity was once the guardian of this galaxy, and that duty calls to us again. Admiral Park's communications device chimed with an incoming fleet-wide message. He read it and looked up, a hint of a smile breaking through his serious demeanor. The outer sensor platforms have detected the first tendrils of the void entity entering our defensive perimeter, he said. It's time. He turned to face the vast windows overlooking Earth and the assembled fleet. Thousands of ships from dozens of worlds formed into battle groups. "We stand ready," he transmitted to the assembled fleet, his voice carrying across space to every vessel. Not as newcomers to the stars, but as their first children, returned at last. As if in response, lights began to flicker on across the Eumwe solar system, ancient defensive installations awakening from their long slumber, ready to face the darkness once more.